The day I was born, there were strange omens in the sky. The imperial astrologer said, this was the omen of Mars guarding the heart. If a daughter was born, she would be noble as an empress. If 2 daughters were born, disaster would befall the entire clan. The midwife brought out a baby girl, and my father excitedly knelt on the ground saying, "Heaven bless my clan." But he didn't know. Half an hour later, I was born. My mother was terrified, and told the maid to quickly and secretly drown me. But I was lucky. I didn't die, and instead was 17 years later, I ambushed and killed my elder sister's convoy on its way to the capital for the imperial selection, disguised myself as her, and entered the Eastern Palace. My surname is Hua, and my name is Hua Zishan. My foster father gave me this name, but he taught me from a young age that one cannot be kind, as kind people often have difficult lives. My foster father's surname is Hua, and his name is Hua Kao. He used to be a eunuch, working his way up from a menial attendant to a chief eunuch of the 2nd rank, until the new emperor ascended the throne, and he received a special decree to retire, and return to his hometown. He was wealthy, buying the large estate that originally belonged to the 2nd branch of the Hua clan, and moved in after meticulous renovation. Perhaps he was lonely in his old age, so he adopted me, an abandoned infant. But his temperament was unpredictable. He often sat in his rocking chair, staring blankly through the window lattice at the sky, for an entire day. The person who usually took care of me was Yung Niang. She also came from the palace. She was very gentle, but she was mute and couldn't speak, so she could only communicate with me through gestures. Later, I learned that she wasn't born with a disability, but her tongue had been brutally cut out. Ever since I was little, I've been made to learn many things: poetry and prose, policy discussions, embroidery, etiquette, archery, and horsemanship, martial arts, zither, and chess. Especially playing chess. I put in a lot of hard work. My adoptive father taught me himself. He was extremely demanding, saying, I didn't have much talent, so I absolutely had to work hard. If I didn't learn well, I would truly get a caning. I really didn't understand. My adoptive father was rich, and the Hua family mansion was exquisitely luxurious everywhere. The 3 of us could just lie flat and do nothing, and we'd still have enough money to spend for the rest of our lives. What was the point of him insisting I learn all this? Until that day, because I couldn't memorize the chess manual, my palms were beaten red and swollen, and I cried until my voice was hoarse. I crawled through a dog hole and escaped from the Hua family's grand mansion. I was 8 years old, and had never stepped outside the courtyard gate. Walking through the long back street, standing in the marketplace teeming with people, I felt a bit lost. Everyone on the street seemed to know me. They looked at me with Miss, I walked along the street in a daze, until I saw a face that was identical to mine. She sat on a splendid sedan chair, decorated with 100 flowers, chin held high, her expression cold and arrogant. It was a face strikingly similar to mine. I felt a chill shoot straight from the soles of my feet to my eyebrows, making me tremble uncontrollably. What is going on? Who is she? And who am I? Before I could even scream, my mouth was covered, and a cloak fell over my head, covering me completely. Foster father's expression was grim, and Mother Yun was anxiously gesturing something to him. After a long while, he let out a long sigh. She should know by now. Only then did I learn of my true identity. The people of the Hua family have always been renowned for their good looks, having produced many empresses and imperial concubines throughout generations, which is why they could firmly secure a place for themselves among the major aristocratic families. But ever since imperial consort Hua passed away, the Hua family has greatly declined, subtly showing signs of decay. When I was born, there were unusual celestial phenomena. The imperial advisor came to the house and said this was an omen of Mars guarding the Heart constellation. If the Hua family were to bear one daughter, she would be honored as empress, but if 2 daughters were born, disaster would befall the entire clan. When the midwife held out a baby girl, father excitedly knelt down, exclaiming, "Heaven bless my clan." But he didn't know that half an hour later, I was born. The Hua family had, in fact, given birth to twin daughters. While the front courtyard was joyfully celebrating the birth of the child destined for greatness, my mother was in sheer panic, ordering a maid to secretly drown me. She didn't dare let her husband know that she had given birth to a child that would bring disaster to the entire clan. But the maid didn't listen to her and handed me over to eunuch Hua. The Hua family didn't know of my existence, and my mother thought I was already dead, my tiny body buried beneath the rocks in the side courtyard. Though I was young, I understood. I was someone who should not have been born. My existence is a mistake and might harm many people. So, my own mother wants to kill me. Even a vicious tiger won't eat its cubs. Yet she is so ruthless. Without me, that only child will be the Hua family's hope and glory. And today, by an extreme coincidence, is precisely my birthday. Huakong is holding a grand procession, celebrating the birthday of my elder sister, who was born auspicious. I cried, and asked my adoptive father, "Why didn't you just let me die back then? If I was just a baby who didn't understand anything, dying would have been fine, and I would." My adoptive father said disdainfully, "Charlatan National Master is just a trickster. If the Hua family treats his words as divine, they're in for big trouble. What is more," he paused and said, "if disaster strikes the whole clan, I'd be more than happy." I didn't understand. "Adoptive father, your surname is also Hua. You're part of the Hua family," he sneered repeatedly. "They never considered me family. I'm not afraid to die either." I roughly understood then. My adoptive father raised me to be a bane. It would be best if I brought ruin upon the entire Hua family. Only then did I put my heart back in my chest, and continued to barely survive with a clear conscience. Yes, barely survived. The day I learned about my true identity, I felt that a part of me had already died. But when I started learning things again, I unconsciously put in a desperate, fierce effort, no longer complaining about hardship or fatigue, and never getting beaten by my adoptive father again. Perhaps I wanted to prove that I was no worse than that twin sister. That day, after just one quick glance, her appearance lingered in my mind for a long time, becoming my bitter nightmare and inner demon. Jealousy and resentment, like wildly growing dodder, crawled all over my dark inner self. Why should she shine like the scorching sun, while I only deserve to live in the dark? Why should I die, and she lives? Why should she be able to grow up under her parents' love and favor, while I have to hide like a mouse? Just because I was born half a shikan later, is she an auspicious omen, born with a phoenix destiny? I don't believe it. Even if she really is a phoenix, I insist on breaking her phoenix wings off at the root and grafting them onto my arms. When I was 16, the Hua family sent Hua Zimu over. Yes, my twin sister. Her name is Hua Zimu. Father scoured through ancient texts and consulted the imperial advisor, finally settling on this name for her. The two characters Zimu come from the songs of Chu. With a gentle glance and a sweet smile, you are admired for your graceful charm. It means a beautiful woman with an elegant demeanor, who will be loved and admired by others. And my name, Zishan, was probably also chosen by my adoptive father, based on this very poem. My heart was filled with resentment and injustice. Even my name had to be picked from the poem used for hers. She lived up to her name, growing up amidst blessings and expectations, nurtured by the Hua family, with the full strength of their clan. As for me, I was cleanly and completely erased from the moment of my birth. My existence, except for the mother who killed me, no one else knows. People are truly born unfair. Want me to be kind? Impossible. I think adoptive father gave me the wrong name. I should be called Hua Bushan instead. My heart is constantly immersed in darkness and resentment. There is absolutely no room for kindness. The Hua family sent Hua Zimu here to learn court etiquette from adoptive father and Yun Yang. She is going to participate in the Crown Prince's concubine selection next year. You observe her actions and behavior carefully. Do not ignore even the slightest detail. Adoptive father instructed. He had me disguise myself as a rough maid and infiltrated Hua Zimu's courtyard. I vaguely knew their plan. Every dragon boat festival, they would prepare offerings to worship a deceased person, whose name on the memorial tablet was Hua Yerong. I guess this person is Consort Hua. While sending their daughter into the palace, the Hua family would also select suitable children from collateral branches of the clan to become palace maids or eunuchs in the palace. This was to cultivate true confidants who would mutually assist the Hua family's daughter and provide support in the struggles of the imperial harem. The Hua family sent 5 children into the palace at that time, but only adoptive father survived in the end. He was intelligent from a young age, well versed in poetry and books, and had strategic calculations, following Consort Hua all the way up, but ultimately fell short by one move. When Consort Hua died, he left the imperial palace. Presumably, he was unwilling to accept it. The Hua family also knew he was unwilling, so they had him guide Hua Zimu's selection for the Eastern Palace to marry the current crown prince. But who he really wanted to send in was actually me. I had originally thought Hua Zimu was the kind of pampered young mistress, but she was greatly different from what I imagined. She was a very quiet person, with a reserved and indifferent nature, as if nothing could truly get into her heart. I intentionally tested her, pretending to be clumsy, knocking over the water bucket, and kneeling down frantically to apologize, but she just airily said, "No matter." Her gaze didn't even fall on me for a second. It seemed tolerant and generous, but it was actually arrogance to the bone. Godfather had taught me not to be fooled by those who bestow favors and show goodwill. That is not innate kindness, but merely cultivated decorum. All external things are like ants. How could a noble person care? Her behavior only further ignited my anger. My hand clenched tightly, nails digging deep into my palm, and resentment gnawed at my heart, bite by bite. Like teeth, I hated her superior completeness, and my own utter brokenness. Beneath her flawless radiance, I was like a disabled clown, flailing about, despite my show of force. I suddenly understood Godfather's intention in having me observe her. She and I were truly fundamentally different. She was a true noble lady, calm and composed. As for me, orphaned since childhood, with a constantly anxious heart, I always wanted to do something to prove myself. Once a person has desires, there will be vulnerabilities. I am filled with ambition and malevolence. During the day, I carefully observed her demeanor. At night, I calmed myself to transcribe scriptures, hoping the sutras would chain the beast within me. Full of malevolence and resentment, she played the guzheng much better than I did. Her music was like a secluded mountain in an empty valley, a realm I could not reach. However, my chess skills were better than hers. Every step I took was a calculated move, filled with deadly intent. Adoptive father said that the current crown prince of the Eastern Palace was skilled at chess. This secret was unknown, even to the master of the Hua family. What they had found out was that the crown prince was fond of music, especially 3 variations of plum blossoms, and had greatly praised the resilience of plum blossoms, blooming in the cold, extensively planting plum blossoms in the Eastern Palace. Hua Zimu's temperament and attire, wasn't it just like a plum blossom spirit? For her, this born phoenix fate, the Hua family truly spared no expense. They not only sought out all sorts of information and widely invited famous teachers to instruct her, but also found her an ancient incense recipe called Gathering Immortals. Its fragrance was rich, pure, and otherworldly, and once infused into her body, it would not dissipate even after many washes. I observed her, monitored her, and imitated her day after day, suppressing the fiery anxiety in my heart. Until that day, the Crown Prince arrived in Huacheng. The Crown Prince was passing through Huacheng to represent the Emperor in comforting the troops. The Hua family was overjoyed and prepared the grandest banquet to receive him, but the Crown Prince didn't come at all. He stayed at the post station, closed his doors to visitors, and showed no respect to the Hua family whatsoever. Foster father snorted coldly and said, "Back then, his mother and consort Hua fought relentlessly. He almost wasn't even born. He detests the Hua clan to the extreme. How could he possibly visit?" I was puzzled. Then why would he let the Hua family participate in the selection? Because of the imperial advisor's prophecy of the Phoenix Mandate. He wants the throne, so he will ultimately still marry. He doesn't dare to risk it. My eyebrows furrowed together. Trying to please a man who detests my identity is a challenge. The maid at the post house suddenly contracted a serious illness. "You go replace her right away," as expected of foster father, who fought his way through the bloody storms of the Deep Palace. He has plans and arrangements for Remember, just make sure the Crown Prince gets an impression of you. Don't do anything unnecessary. Yes, but how to make the Crown Prince remember me? That was what troubled me. I changed into the coarse linen dress of a posthouse maid, removed my hairpins and jewelry, and applied no makeup. After thinking for a long time, finally, I lit Hua Zimu's Jushan incense. Her incredibly precious incense formula had long since been stolen by me. At the post house, I carried a tray in my hands, on which was the Crown Prince's supper. The imperial attendant "When you enter the courtyard, you must not look up. Hand the supper to the guards outside the door, and leave quickly. Do not look around, lest you offend a noble. No amount of lives would be enough to compensate. Maids aren't even allowed to look up, and won't even see the..." My forehead broke out in a sweat from anxiety. I only had this one chance. If I couldn't seize it, I would never be able to get close again. Walking to the corridor, I noticed that the east-facing window of the Crown Prince's room was open, and through the light gauze covering the window, I vaguely saw a silhouette. I flicked my sleeves, let out a soft ire, and twisted my ankle. The tray in my hand clattered to the ground. The guard drew his knife and stepped towards me, and I, facing the direction of the window, found the right angle and slightly tilted my face up. "What is it?" A deep voice rang out, and I knew I had gambled correctly. That person appeared by the window, directly meeting my eyes. He had black hair in a golden crown, sharp eyebrows, and bright eyes. His thin lips tightly pursed, with a noble and distinguished demeanor. Your servant accidentally twisted her ankle. Please forgive me, noble one." He suddenly sniffed and gave me a careful look. "What fragrance is so pleasant?" My eyes darted, and I looked at him deeply, then lowered my head at the right moment, revealing a patch of fair neck, pretending to be frightened and terrified. "Never mind." He waved his hand. I quickly tidied up the broken dishes on the ground, bowed, and then, since that day, every time I remembered his appearance, I always felt my heart pound uneasily. That thrilling palpitation came fiercely and obscurely. It wasn't until a year later that I ambushed Hua Zimu's entourage on their way to the capital for the imperial selection, disguised myself as her, and entered the Eastern Palace. Godfather said, "Know yourself and your enemy, and you will never be defeated. You must understand your opponent's way of thinking and psychology, put yourself in their shoes, then adopt the appropriate strategy, and only then can you strike and kill in one blow." Served Hua Zimu as a maid of all work for a whole year, and observed and imitated her for a whole year. But Godfather was even more forbearing. He had lain dormant and plotted in the Hua family for 17 years. Finally, halfway through Hua Zimu's journey to the capital for the selection, his people ambushed and killed the entire entourage. I, with a new convoy, replaced them, and embarked on the journey to the capital for the selection. The maids, nannies, servants, and guards I brought were all prepared according to the build and appearance of the people in the previous entourage. They were the loyal assassins Godfather had prepared. Godfather said that the servants Hua Zimu brought to the capital were all trained by the Hua family from a young age, and he was once one of them. So he knew exactly what abilities these people possessed. Just in case, all these people had to be replaced with our own people. Only then would it be convenient to transmit messages and items. I knew Godfather must have other plans. The people he replaced them with were most likely well-trained killers, and their target was very probably the current empress. The death of noble consort Hua was a knot in their hearts that he and Yunyang could not untangle. Their goal should be revenge. I didn't ask what happened to Huazimu. By the time I arrived, the slaughter had stopped, and all traces of the struggle had been wiped away. The newly replaced maids lit incense to dispel the lingering smell of blood in the air, and I, wearing Huazimu's clothes, sitting in her opulent carriage, remembered that scene when I was a child by the roadside, blankly and fearfully, looking at her face in the carriage. I curved a cold smile. In my Huazishan's life, there is no kindness, magnanimity, forgiveness, or letting go, only the merciless turning of fate. Everything that belongs to me, I will snatch back with my own efforts. The selection process went through initial selection, medical examination, and in the end, only 10 noble daughters remained, and came to the imperial garden to be personally chosen by the empress. The current empress is surnamed Wang, and comes from the Langya Wang clan. She looked extremely gentle, her brows like a new moon, her phoenix eyes demure, her ears thick and long, with a natural cinnabar mole on her forehead, resembling the image of Guanyin in a temple. The emperor was a devout believer in Taoism, and liked auspicious omens. With her Guanyin-like appearance, no wonder it was she who gave birth to the crown prince, defeated consort Hua, and eventually ascended to the position of empress. She is both the person I currently need to actively please and my most formidable opponent in the future, and she probably doesn't like me, because the look in her eyes as she gazed at me was filled with undisguised pickiness and dislike. Literature reveals character. You are all beautiful and intelligent children, who surpass the rest. Write an essay to show me. It doesn't matter if it is a poem or a lyric. Just take plum blossoms as the theme. I knew then, this was the literary selection step. My godfather had said that we needed to see how well the maidens wrote. Messy handwriting was not allowed. Bad writing posture was not wanted, and those not well versed in poetry and literature would not do. But if you wanted to come out on top and attract attention, then you had to be. I neither wrote poetry nor lyrics. Instead, I wrote a policy essay. This was an extremely risky move. Talented women were, of course, likable. But women with talent for governing would only be feared by men. But I believed that if my godfather dared to let me do this, there must be a reason. He had fought with Empress Wang for many years, so he must understand this opponent very well. So I wrote, a gentleman is like a plum blossom, dignified, but not contentious, associating but not forming factions, unearthing the obscure, promoting the virtuous, removing the malicious, offering loyal advice. This is the legacy of the sages. When Empress Wang saw my essay, her gentle expression changed for the first time. She looked at me with a faint, unreadable smile, and said to the female official beside her, "Have the crown prince come over." My heart suddenly began to pound rapidly. I heard that the crown prince fell off his horse during His Majesty's autumn hunt, and suffered a minor injury, which is why we had been in the palace for half a month. And despite all the maiden's efforts, none of us had seen him. Recalling our previous glance at the post house, his eyes were like clear, cold pools with jade, sinking into the lake of my heart and rippling outwards, making my cheeks instantly flush hot. Before long, the crown prince arrived in his palanquin. Seeing the line of women bowing their heads, his brow furrowed. "Imperial Mother, didn't I let you oversee the selection? It is nothing more than choosing from the families of those few people Imperial Father has already picked." Empress Wang smiled, and handed him the article. "Take a look at this." He read it, His pupils sharply constricted, and there was incredulous surprise in his eyes. He asked, "Who wrote it?" Empress Wang pointed at me and said, "It is her." I pretended to be panicked, yet forced myself to remain calm, stepped forward, bowed and said, "Your humble servant, Hua Zimu." He was slightly taken aback, seemed to recognize me, gave me a meaningful look, and said, "How audacious. Your humble servant is terrified. Who taught you to write it?" The Empress asked for plum blossoms as the theme. Your humble servant was bold, and wrote her heart's desire. He looked at me deeply again, and said to Empress Wang, "She is indeed of noble character." Later, I learned that the Crown Prince had submitted a treatise to the Emperor on rectifying official governance, for officials to be as pure as ice and frost, for common people to forget greed and avarice, and for every household to be prosperous. Governance must be conducted with virtue to stabilize the nation and bring peace to the common folk. If corruption runs rampant, or harsh policies are fiercer than tigers, leading to people's suffering, the nation will cease to be a nation. The emperor was furious after reading it, rebuked the crown prince, saying he intended to shake the foundations of the nation, and that his heart was punishable by death. Because of this incident, the crown prince was confined for a long time, and consort Xiao had just given birth to a prince. The emperor's health had been poor in recent years. He was obsessed with the state preceptor's alchemy and cultivation, neglected state affairs, and began to harbor suspicion towards the crown prince. The crown prince felt a suffocating depression that was hard to bear, so he used his fondness for plum blossoms to express his noble integrity and purity. My godfather's control over people's hearts had already reached a point where his strategies were absolutely flawless. This risky gamble indeed succeeded. My policy essay resonated deeply with the crown prince. The aristocratic daughters who remained until the end were a total of 3 people. Mi Yunrong, the legitimate eldest daughter of the Minister of Personnel, and Wang Mingzhen, Empress Wang's niece. From among the 3 of us, 1 crown princess and 2 secondary consorts will be chosen, and the primary consort is very likely to be Wang Mingzhen. The Wang family sent Wang Mingzhen into the palace precisely for the future position of empress. Wang Mingzhen is the crown prince's cousin, and they have known each other since childhood. So Empress Wang would not possibly let her niece suffer the indignity of being a secondary consort. What is more, she detests people from the Hua family. Wang Mingzhen as the primary consort, and Li Yunrong and I as secondary consorts, was almost the acknowledged outcome by everyone. But I am not reconciled. Now I am Hua Zimu, with the destiny of a born empress, and I absolutely refuse to be subservient to others. What is more, with this prophecy of a born empress, Wang Mingzhen wouldn't possibly let me go either. In this game, I must at least pull the crown prince to my side. Finally, the maidservant found out the crown prince's whereabouts. He had recently been staying at the imperial Zhuqingqi, which draws hot springs from Sishan, and has miraculous healing effects for bruises and sprains. That night, I secretly went to Zhuqingqi, a hot spring pool built of stone, surrounded by a vast bamboo forest. Just as night fell, the moonlight was cold and clear, sprinkling on the water's surface, as if bathing in the bright moonlight. Hence it was named Zhuoqing. The palace servants attending him had already been led away. I quietly walked over and saw a naked Strong back in the pool. This was unexpected. I had originally intended to find him for a game of chess. I had diligently studied chess for so many years, precisely for this moment, but I didn't expect that I would catch him in the middle of bathing. "Summon," he suddenly called out, afraid he would call the palace servants. I could only, with blushing cheeks, bravely walk over and hand him the white patterned cloth towel draped by the pool. He didn't look closely, thinking it was a palace servant, and casually took it. "Tea," he commanded again. I was a bit flustered, and for a moment didn't know where the tea was. It was then that he realized something was off, and turned around to see me. "It is you." He suddenly chuckled, and said, You really came. He extended his long arm and suddenly pulled me into the pool. I lost my balance, gasped, choked on some water, before he grabbed me and pulled me to the surface. Crown Prince, he chuckled, so impatient. Before I could open my mouth to ask him what he meant, he leaned in and kissed me. My mind instantly went dizzy. I was at a loss, and could only trembling tightly grasp his arm. This indeed went against propriety. My mind was calculating and struggling, wondering if I should push him away, or finally, I steeled my heart. I awkwardly responded to him. And when his desire was at its peak, I said, I want to be your wife, like an ordinary married couple. He, however, suddenly stopped his movements, frowned and asked, Who are you? My heart clenched, and I almost thought, but he seemed to have just asked casually, and then used a kiss to block all the words I wanted to say. That night, I stayed at Zhuoqing Pond. A few days later, on the auspicious day chosen by the Imperial Astronomical Bureau, the enforcement envoy arrived, holding the Golden Imperial Decree, and loudly proclaimed, by the mandate of heaven, the Emperor decrees, that now, there is Hua Shizi Mu, the eldest daughter of the Hua clan, from a renowned family, possessing both virtue and grace, suitable to be a good match for the Crown Prince. She is hereby enforced as the Crown Princess, and bestowed residence in the Eastern Palace. I suppressed my inner excitement and kowtowed in gratitude. I succeeded. I won. I felt my soul trembling and screaming. What if they were the Empress's niece, or the daughter of an important court official? They were just secondary consorts. From now on, they will also be firmly suppressed by me. I am the wife. They are the concubines. I wear a phoenix coronet, while they are only fit for pheasants. The distinction has been made, a world of difference. My grand wedding with the Crown Prince was imminent, and the Hua family had also arrived in the capital. I met my birth parents for the first time, even with all the mental preparation. The moment I saw them, my blood surged violently to my head, and then in an instant, it froze and flowed back, leaving my entire body in a bone-chilling numbness, my throat feeling like it was tightly blocked by scorching sand, even though my reason told me that I was Hua Zimu now, and absolutely must not be discovered. Tears still couldn't help but gush out of my eyes. I thought I would hate, resent, and be angry, but when I actually saw them, I suddenly felt wronged like a child, and couldn't stop crying. I was terribly afraid they would notice something was off, but I just couldn't control myself. Seeing me cry and my hands trembling, my mother hugged me tightly, constantly calling me my dearest. My father, who had never known I existed, also cried, Heaven has mercy. My wish has finally been granted. My Hua family is saved. All these years I've been anxious and fearful, terrified that the Hua family would be purged, but now I can finally put my heart at ease. My child, you did well. You truly are born with the phoenix's destiny. As for me, facing my mother's embrace, my body was stiff, and I was at a loss. Fortunately, they were immersed in the excitement of their family, giving birth to another crown princess, and assumed I was just overly emotional. So they temporarily didn't realize I was a fake. Not Hua Zimu. That is right. One of them had no idea I existed in this world, and the other thought I had died long ago. So this is what it feels like to have parents. I didn't feel touched or warm. The more they cherished Hua Zimu, the sadder it made me. The beast in my heart desperately wants to tear off their masks of tenderness, tell them the cruel truth, and then kill them, one stab at a time. I'm truly wronged. I truly hate and I truly resent. The only thing that can make me suppress my emotions is the upcoming grand wedding. I told myself, you're about to marry the crown prince, become the mistress of the East Palace, and then become the empress, second only to one person, above 10,000 others, worshipped by your subjects. and even your birth parents will have to kowtow to you. Only then did I suppress the accumulated grievances and malice of these past years. I forced myself to act like Huazimu, aloof and noble, enduring the pain gnawing at my heart, and finally made it to the grand wedding with the crown prince. But on the night of the grand wedding, the crown prince didn't enter my room. He went to concubine Wang Mingzhen's place. I sat upright all night, and he still didn't come over. I, the crown prince's primary consort, suffered immense humiliation on my wedding night. The next day, the crown prince and I were supposed to pay respects to the emperor and empress according to custom. When the crown prince saw me, he didn't explain anything, just gave me a half smile. I couldn't help but feel both angry and guilty. If it were Hua Zishan's temperament, I probably would have slapped him, but I still put on the calm and composed demeanor Hua Zimu should have, as if nothing had happened. When we arrived at Kuning Palace, Wang Mingzhen was already serving Empress Wang her breakfast. I knew this was her deliberately humiliating me, giving me a warning. I pretended not to see her, and dutifully greeted the Empress. The Emperor hadn't been to morning court for a long time. He was frail, and plagued by illnesses since childhood, with few heirs, only having one legitimate son, the crown prince. Despite numerous concubines in the harem, no children had been born for a very long time. Apart from the princess consort Hua, gave birth to that year, who died young. Ever since he cultivated Tao and refined elixirs with the imperial advisor, his health got much better. Consort Xiao gave birth to the second prince, and talented Lady Liu also bore a daughter. This made the emperor trust the imperial advisor even more, performing fasts, rituals, and prayers every day, pursuing the art of immortality. When the crown prince and I went to offer thanks, he was seated on a high platform outside the elixir chamber in the west garden, dressed in a raimy Taoist robe with wide clothes and large sleeves, as if he was about to ride the wind and ascend immediately, and the imperial advisor stood with his head bowed, also looking quite like an immortal. Palm of my hand under my sleeve clenched tightly. That demonic Taoist, the imperial advisor, if it weren't for his prophecy of a female phoenix fate, I wouldn't have lost everything the moment I was born. If I ascend to the position of empress someday, I must kill him first. Though I thought this, I pretended to be respectful, keeping my head bowed low, fearing that the imperial advisor might truly have some sorcery to detect any anomaly. The emperor opened his narrow eyes and asked, "Is this the flower family's child of phoenix fate?" The imperial advisor replied, "Yes, it is she. She will assist your majesty in ascending to immortality when the time comes." Logically speaking, with the emperor devoted to cultivating immortality and fond of auspicious omens, he should have been pleased with me. But he looked at me with a sinister gaze, gave a cold laugh. The laughter was short-lived, echoing in the empty alchemy room, sounding extremely eerie, and a layer of cold sweat immediately broke out on my back. "Bestow the pills." A palace attendant came over, carrying a wooden box inside which were 2 bright red pills. The crown prince respectfully picked up one and swallowed it. I also had no choice but to imitate him, enduring the eerie feeling in my heart, and ate the pill. "All right, you may withdraw." After we left the West Garden, the crown prince found a quiet, secluded spot, reached his hand into his throat and stirred, then began to vomit. "But is it poisonous?" He gave a bitter smile. "Do you know what this pill was refined from?" I shook my head. "Never mind. It is a blessing not to know." The more I thought about it, the more panicked I felt, imitating the crown prince's method of inducing vomiting, wanting to vomit out that pill, but I vomited until I was dizzy and disoriented, yet still didn't manage to vomit out the pill. Later, I heard that the pill was refined from virgin's lead blood, a child's heart, zombie tui pea, shed skin, etc. No wonder the crown prince was so nauseated. I knew that the imperial back palaces throughout history were always treacherous and unpredictable, but being in it, I truly felt that every step was filled with peril. I wrote a letter to my foster father, telling him about the current situation in the palace, and asked the maid to find a way to deliver it. A few days later, my foster father's reply was sent hidden in the snacks. I unfolded the small piece of paper, and there were only 2 words on it: kill the emperor. These 2 words truly sent shivers down my spine. I quickly put the paper slip on the candlelight and burned it, even burying the ashes in a flower pot. Only then did I feel relieved. I had always known that my foster father was plotting something big, but I originally thought that the one he wanted to kill was Empress Wang. I didn't expect that he intended to commit regicide. Now that the crown prince is being suspected, and noble consort Xiao's second prince is eyeing the throne like a tiger, it is indeed a situation where delays bring many troubles. If the emperor dies and the crown prince succeeds to the throne, I will be the legitimate and rightful empress. Thinking of this, my heart couldn't help but stir. In August, for the emperor's grand birthday, I presented a copy of the classic of Penetrating the Profound Truth, personally written by Celestial Master Ji, from the previous dynasty, as a birthday gift. Legend has it that Celestial Master Ji had profound cultivation, was most skilled at alchemy, could summon wind and rain, and finally ascended to become an immortal at the age of 300. This scripture was written by Celestial Master Ji, pricking his own tongue-tip blood, grinding cinnabar, and mixing with gold dust on alum-treated golden paper. It gleamed brilliantly, was priceless beyond words, and was truly a supreme treasure of Taoism. The emperor was greatly pleased, so much so that he even treated the crown prince with a more gentle and pleasant demeanor. The crown prince's gloomy and frustrated expression vanished instantly, and he finally cast aside his 2 concubines. Lodging with me every night, in moments of intimacy, he held me and said, "Zimu, thank you so much. I knew it. Marrying you as my consort, even against my mother's opposition, was the right decision. You are indeed an auspicious omen." I nestled into his embrace with a coquettish smile, but what I was thinking in my heart was, I am Hua Zishan. When will he truly call my name just once? Perhaps there will never be such an opportunity. Ever since I replaced Hua Zimu and took her auspicious identity, it was destined there wouldn't be such a day. The 15th day of the 8th month, the night of the Mid-Autumn Festival, it should have been a time for family reunion and moon gazing, and the palace also arranged a grand banquet and lantern viewing, hosted by Empress Wang. For the moon worship ceremony, the emperor should have attended in person, offered incense, bowed, and worshipped, praying for peace and prosperity for the nation, and favorable weather. But the emperor still didn't come, and Empress Wang stood in for him again. The emperor said he wanted to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth on the full moon night, and deepen his cultivation. He ascended to the cultivation terrace in Shuyuan, consumed 2 newly refined elixirs, and meditated intently. But suddenly he vomited fresh blood, and died violently. With the emperor's death, the palace descended into complete chaos. Empress Wang was swift and decisive. She immediately sealed off Shuyuan, and apprehended everyone from the alchemy department, including the imperial preceptor. The palace gates were also closed, and all court officials and noblewomen attending the imperial banquet were ordered to stay put, strictly forbidden from entering or exiting. The crown prince first secured the imperial seal, then summoned the prime minister, the commander of the embroidered uniform guard, the grand master of the imperial clan court, the Duke of Zhengguo, and others, bringing along imperial physicians to jointly investigate the emperor's cause of death. It was ultimately determined to be caused by consuming elixirs. The elixirs were found to contain cinnabar, rhubarb, sulfur, red lead, and mercury, their properties fiercer than tigers and wolves. Empress Wang was furious, and ordered the imperial preceptor to be executed by slow slicing. The imperial preceptor kept arguing that the emperor had achieved immortality through corpse liberation, but nobody believed his nonsense. The emperor died suddenly, without a last will. But the crown prince's succession was a natural course of events, and the Ministry of Rites had already started getting busy, preparing for the late emperor's funeral ceremony and the new emperor's enthronement ceremony. Empress Wang was a ruthless woman, she said. The late emperor had always loved Consort Shao the most, and ordered Consort Shao to be buried with him. Consort Shao naturally refused, and was strangled to death with a white silk sash. The dynasty's power thus changed hands, cold and turbulent. In my heart, I was actually very pleased. Everything was proceeding smoothly, according to my plan. Nobody discovered the emperor's true cause of death, and nobody suspected me. Or rather, too many people wanted him dead, and didn't want to delve into the cause of his death. The pills he ate were always those same pills, and they had not been tampered with. The pills were indeed potent medicine, but he usually ate a vegetarian diet, and took tonics to strengthen his constitution, so a single pill wouldn't have caused his sudden death. The thing that truly killed him was hidden within that Taoist treasure. The Tongxuan True Scripture, Master Jie's Tongxuan True Scripture, was real. I don't know where my adoptive father found it, and then added a medicine that was incompatible with the pills into it. The two combined to create the virulent poison. The imperial preceptor was the best scapegoat. He made me suffer alone for many years, and I finally got my revenge. The Ministry of Rites has already sent the Empress's phoenix coronet, ceremonial robes, and jade gui tablet, and I was only waiting for the rising sun tomorrow, to become the Empress who mothers the nation, the queen of the country. From an infant abandoned in swaddling clothes, to the master of the imperial palace, only I knew how much pain I endured. Full of anticipation, I fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up the next day, I found myself already in a low-class brothel outside the palace. I was both shocked and furious, and extremely terrified. I didn't understand what happened. This should have been the day of my coronation as empress, but why was I tied up in a brothel? Until the door was pushed open, my pupils suddenly constricted. Hua Zimu, didn't she die? I didn't think adoptive father would leave any survivors, but she was clearly standing alive in front of me, looking at me with a very repulsive, condescending expression. My mind raced, trying to figure out what was going on. Did adoptive father keep her alive to control me? So there really is someone who looks exactly like me. Her icy hand touched my face. When Crown Prince brother told me about it, I didn't believe it. I didn't expect it to be true. My heart skipped a beat. The Crown Prince knew all along. I gave a bitter smile and said, I am Hua Zimu, the daughter of the Hua family. She indeed had good self-control. She didn't get angry upon hearing it, and just said blandly, a fake. She knows how to kill with the slightest means, to utterly destroy one's spirit. Actually, thank you for giving me the Empress's position. Really? Was she plotting the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the aureole behind scheme? Is this also part of Godfather's calculations, or was I just a pawn to be discarded after being used? She pulled out the phoenix hairpin from her hair, held it against my cheek, and said coldly, I don't know why you look so similar to me, but I hate your face. I won't kill you, but I will disfigure this imposter face, and then throw you into this lowest class brothel, making you the most contemptible a pillow for 1,000 men, ridden by 10,000. Is that so? Seeing the hairpin in her hand stab fiercely towards the corner of my eye, Hua Zimu froze, confused as to how I had broken free from the ropes. She naturally wouldn't understand. My past 18 years were completely different from her 18 years of being a pampered noble lady from an influential family. I practiced martial arts in the bitter cold of winter and the scorching heat of summer. If I was even slightly lazy, I would get a beating from Godfather. I don't know how many times I cried for this before, not understanding why I, a woman, had to work so hard to learn these things. But now I know. Using the skills I learned, I forcibly dislocated my wrist, enduring intense pain, and pulled my hand out from the tightly bound ropes. I snatched the phoenix hairpin from her hand and plunged it into her heart. May we never meet again, my sister. I killed Hua Zimu, scarred her face, changed the clothes and ornaments on her body, and walked out. The palace servants waiting at the door bowed to me and led me to board the carriage returning to the palace. From then on, I was the real Hua Zimu. No one would ever suspect my identity again. From then on, the Hua family had only one daughter, that was me. The fake pretending to be the real one was discovered. Then the real one was killed, and there would be no fake in the world anymore. Was this also within Godfather's calculations? Back in the palace, the crown prince smiled and took my hand, asking, "Has it been handled properly?" I wasn't sure what he was referring to, or how much he knew, so I could only give an ambiguous answer. "You were clearly with me at the Huacheng Inn back then, but she was indeed a virgin." It was then that I suddenly realized, when the crown prince arrived in Huacheng, I disguised myself as a maid to get close to him. Unexpectedly, Hua Zimu, with her appearance like a celestial being, was even bolder, and immediately threw herself into the crown prince's arms. For the empress position, the Hua family and she were truly unexpectedly so desperate, they didn't even care about their dignity anymore. No wonder that night at Zuoqing Pool, the crown prince's behavior was so lustful and strange. I didn't dare to ask more, fearing to give myself away, as more words lead to more mistakes. I also found that the maid I brought into the palace was gone, which meant my connection with Godfather was cut off. My mind was full of doubts, and afraid of arousing suspicion. I never dared to ask about her whereabouts, or where she had gone after enduring a few days. I finally awaited my empress enthronement ceremony. At the first quarter of Maoshi, bells and drums rang out simultaneously. Civil and military officials stood solemnly with bowed heads according to their ranks, and inner and outer imperial wives wore magnificent pheasant robes. As for me, wearing the 9-dragon 4 phoenix crown, following the ceremonial officers' chanted words, presenting the imperial decree and seal, I received the golden decree and jade seal given to me by the new emperor. Your humble servant, Hua Zimu, respectfully accepts the imperial decree and seal. With utmost respect and diligence, I shall uphold the ancestral temple and serve His Majesty. I stood at the highest point of the imperial steps, slowly turned around, facing the civil and military officials and inner and outer imperial wives. They uniformly knelt down, prostrating themselves in homage, and collectively cried out, "Her Imperial Majesty, the Empress, may you live 1,000 years." 1,000 years. I held the heavy golden imperial decree for the Empress, but my feelings were not as I had imagined. I had thought I would feel pure joy and triumph, but in fact, I was both dazed, exhausted, and bewildered. My past and future are both thorny paths at the pinnacle of power, no matter which way I walk. Every step is fraught with peril. Unlike his father, the new emperor is an ambitious emperor, wholeheartedly determined to rectify the bureaucracy, clean up the aristocratic families, and become a wise monarch whose name will go down in history. Does he love Hua Zimu? I never asked the question out loud in the end. Hua Zimu, or me? I gradually came to realize a reality. For him, love was just a diversion, not something very important. To secure my position as empress, I had to be useful enough. I used the entire Hua family to pledge allegiance to the Empress Dowager and the new emperor. The Hua family became the first noble family to be made an example of. Clan members were dismissed from their posts, had their property confiscated, and were forbidden from holding office. With the empress's maternal clan already purged, it would be easy to deal with the other noble families. The new emperor and Empress Dowager were greatly satisfied with this. An empress without the support of powerful maternal relatives was very safe. I was more suitable to be empress than Wang Mingzhen. Otherwise, the Wang family's immense power would surely create obstacles. As for me, my heart also felt a bit more at ease, With the Hua family's downfall and dispersal, no one would ever recognize my true identity again. However, the people I sent to find my foster father and Yunyang returned to say that the mansion where I grew up was already empty. I grieved and was perplexed by this for a long time. Did they escape? Or were they silenced by Prince Consort or Hua Zimu's people back then? Their whereabouts became a lingering concern for me. It wasn't until many years later, when the Empress Dowager fell gravely ill, that she suddenly summoned me. Her hair was already white, and her face showed signs of illness. She looked at me and smiled. Her smile still carried that compassionate Guanyin-like demeanor. For some reason, my heart tightened, and an indescribable emotion surged within me. These 3 words exploded in my mind like a thunderbolt, shocking me almost to death. I almost instinctively reacted, wanting to kill her to silence her. "Don't be afraid," she said. "I knew it all along. It is just that I'm dying, and there are some things I wanted to tell you." Every word she spoke was deeply shocking. "Your adoptive father, Hua Chao, has always been my person." That one sentence completely stunned me. Back then, we conspired to kill Consort Hua and the child in her womb. Later, he sent you in, killed the late emperor, and wiped out the Hua family. I was so shocked I could barely find my voice. Why? Hua Kao was a descendant of a branch family of the Hua clan, intelligent from a young age and studied well. He was originally meant to pursue an official career, but was chosen by the Hua family and sent into the palace to become an eunuch. How could he not hate? Entering the palace with Consort Hua was also her illegitimate sister, named Hua Yurong. I felt as if I'd been struck by lightning again. The memorial tablet my adoptive father worshipped, with Hua Yurong's name written on it. It wasn't Consort Hua's after all. I wasn't very old at the time, and with my subjective preconceptions, I took it for granted that Hua Yurong was Consort Hua and never considered any other possibility. Hua Yurong was not as stunningly beautiful as her legitimate sister, but she was quiet and lovable. Hua Kao had liked her since childhood. She served as Consort Hua's palace maid for 5 full years, meticulously serving her every day, just to be able to leave the palace when she reached the right age. But Consort Hua was pregnant at the time, and to secure favor, she arranged for the late emperor to sleep with Hua Yurong. This child was too foolish. She couldn't accept it for a moment, couldn't get over it, and hanged herself the very next day. After she died, Hua Zhao almost went mad. He found me, wanting to cooperate with me. We conspired to kill concubine. Hua Zhao took a palace maid and left the palace. This sorrowful place. Returning to Huacheng. Later, I found Hua Zhao, wanting him to help me kill the former emperor. I am the empress. Every move I make has far-reaching consequences, making it difficult for me to act. One careless step, and it would implicate the crown prince. And Hua Zhao proposed a condition, which was for you to become the crown princess. I agreed. Only then did I understand that everything was indeed within foster father's plans and arrangements. He truly planned everything flawlessly. No wonder my path thus far, though perilous, was smooth. I prided myself on being smart. For many years, I had been immensely proud of my step-by-step. Turns out, in this game, I was merely a chess piece that had been arranged. I'm saying all this to make you understand what we once paid for this. Truly good people cannot survive in the palace and the imperial court. Your foster father taught you well. You act ruthlessly and can weigh the pros and cons well. My imperial son is unlike his father. He is ambitious, but his cunning is insufficient, and his methods are too soft. For these past years, I've been his support, restraining the officials, and thus the court affairs have been clear, and the people peaceful. But I'm dying soon. Swear to me that you will, in my stead, protect him and this realm. She didn't trust me. She wanted to use this secret to ensure I wouldn't harm her descendants later. If I didn't agree, I would be the one to die. I knelt on the ground and solemnly swore, I, Hua Zishan, will faithfully assist your majesty to become a wise ruler, repaying the great kindness of my adoptive father and the Empress Dowager. If I only scheme for myself and violate this oath, may heaven punish me, robbing me of my life and meting out a cruel death. Only then did the Empress Dowager smile contentedly and suddenly pass away. For the rest of my life, I never saw my adoptive father and Yunyang again. I often thought of them. When I was young, my adoptive father's dazed look as he stared at the sky, and Yunyang's gentle manner as she sewed dresses for me. I dared not think deeply if my adoptive father and Yunyang's sudden disappearance was because they foresaw that I would kill them to silence them. I dared even less to ponder or speculate if I would ultimately do such a thing. On yet another Mid-Autumn festival night, a palace banquet, where ruler and ministers celebrated together, the Eastern Kingdom presented a twin lotus flower. Everyone says, twin flowers blooming, sharing the same root and breath, the same heart and life, is an auspicious omen. My imperial son had already been appointed crown prince, and he swayed his head as he recited a poem. Green lotus leaves cover the green water. Lotus flowers are adorned in fresh red. Below are conjoined lotus roots, above are twin lotus flowers. Everyone praised the crown prince's talent. Empress Mother, you also compose a poem for us to hear. I suddenly thought of Hua Zimu's appearance. These years, I have become less and less like her ethereal temperament. The emperor even joked that, after I became empress, I grew increasingly majestic and stern. Actually, it was me who stopped imitating her, and gradually became myself again. I said, twin lotus flowers are in full bloom, but jealous wind and rain tear them down even more. From the same root, a hidden plot to take life. Once the fragrant soul is strangled, life is over. For a moment, all the officials fell silent. Even the sound of music's silk and bamboo instruments abruptly stopped. On a mid-autumn festival, with blooming flowers and a full moon, this poem was abrupt and ominous. The emperor seemed to remember something, quickly found a topic, and steered the conversation away from it. I don't know how much inside information he knew, or if he recognized my true identity. Over the years, we both wore our respective masks, perfectly playing the role of a loving emperor and empress. I suddenly remembered the national preceptor's prophecy again. Actually, all his words had come true. Thinking it over carefully, it was truly unsettling. He once said, "It is she who will send his majesty to..." Even the late emperor truly was on that mid-autumn night, sent by me to the Western paradise. Whether he became an immortal or a ghost, no one would ever know. That demonic Taoist, the national preceptor, although ordered to be executed, he still escaped in the end, and his whereabouts are unknown. I still don't know whose person he was, or what role he played. That prophecy of being born with a phoenix destiny, was it also prearranged? In the palace, sounds of music and dance. A scene of peace and prosperity with singing and dancing. Only I shivered with a chill, feeling the murderous intent of fate.